Treaty with the Seneca, Seneca, and Shawnee, Quapaws, February 23, 1867, ratified June 18, 1868. Articles of Agreement concluded at Washington, D.C., the 23rd day of February, 1867, between the United States, represented by Louis V. Bogie, Commissioner of Indian Affairs, W.H. Watson, Special Commissioner, Thomas Murphy, Superintendent of Indian Affairs, George C. Snow, and G.A. Colton, U.S. Indian Agents, duly authorized. And the Senecas, represented by George Spicer and John Mush, the Senecas and Shawnees by John Whitetree, John Young, and Louis Davis, the Quapaws by S.G. Valier and Kajika, the Confederated Peorias, Kaskaskias, Weas, and Pinkshaws by Baptiste Peoria, John Mitchell and Edward Black, the Miamis by Thomas Medosinia and Thomas Richardville, and the Ottawas of Blanchard's Fork and Roche de Boeuf by John White and J.T. Jones, and including certain Wyandots, represented by Toromi or John Hatt and John Caraho. Whereas it is desirable that arrangements should be made by which portions of certain tribes parties hereto now residing in Kansas should be enabled to remove to other lands and Indian country south of that state, while other portions of said tribes desire to dissolve their tribal relations and become citizens, and whereas it is necessary to provide certain tribes parties hereto now residing in Indian country, which means of rebuilding their houses, reopening their farms, and supporting their families, they have been driven from their reservations early in the late war, and suffered greatly for several years, and being willing to sell a portion of their lands to procure such relief, and whereas a portion of the Wyandots, parties to the Treaty of 1855, although taking lands in severalty, have sold said lands and are still poor, and have not been compelled to become citizens, but have remained without clearly recognized organization, while others who did become citizens are unfit for the responsibilities of citizenship. And whereas the Wyandots treaty within 1855 have just claims against the government which will enable a portion of their people, herein referred to begin a new tribal existence. Therefore, it is agreed. Article 1. The Senecas cede to the U.S. a strip of land on the north side of their present reservation in Indian country, the land so ceded to be bounded on the east by the state of Missouri, on the north by the north line of the reservation, on the west by the Neosho River, and running south for the necessary distance to contain 20,000 acres, for which the government is to pay $20,000. Upon the ratification of this treaty, the south line of said tract to be ascertained by survey at the cost of the U.S. Article 2. The Senecas, now confederated with the Shawnees and owning an undivided half of a reservation in an Indian country immediately north of the Seneca reservation mentioned in the preceding article, cede to the U.S. one half of said Seneca and Shawnee reserve, which it is mutually agreed shall be the north half, bounded on the east by the state of Missouri, north by the Quapaw reserve, west by the Neosho River, and south by an east and west line, bisecting the present Seneca and Shawnee reserve into equal parts. The said line to be determined by survey at the expense of the U.S., for which tract of land, estimated to contain about 30,000 acres, the U.S. will pay the sum of $24,000. Article 3. The Shawnees, heretofore confederated with the Senecas, cede to the U.S. that portion of their remaining lands, bounded as follows, beginning at a point where Spring River crosses the south line of the tract, in the second article, ceded to the U.S., thence down said river to the south line of the Shawnee Reserve, thence west to the Neosho River, thence up said river to the south line of the tract ceded in the second article, and thence east to the place of beginning, supposed to contain about 12,000 acres, the area to be ascertained by survey at the expense of the U.S. to pay for the same at the rate of $1 per acre, as soon as the areas shall be ascertained. Article 4. The Quapaws cede to the U.S. that portion of their land lying in the state of Kansas, being a strip of land on the north line of their reservation about 1/2 mile in width and containing about 12 sections in all, excepting therefrom 1/2 section to be patented to Samuel G. Valier, including his improvements. Also the further tract within their present reserve bounded as follows, beginning at a point in the Neosho River, where the south line of the Quapaw Reserve strikes that stream, thence east 3 miles, thence north to the Kansas boundary line, thence west on the sideline to the Neosho River, thence down said river to the place of beginning, and the U.S. will pay to the Quapaws for the half-mile strip lying in Kansas at the rate of $1.25 per acre whenever the area of the same shall be ascertained, and for the other tract described in this article at the rate of $1.15 per acre whenever the area of the same shall be ascertained by survey, said survey to be made at the cost of the tribe to which said tract is herein provided to be sold under the preemption laws of the U.S., but all such preemption shall be paid in the money of the U.S. at the proper land office within 1 year from the date of entry and settlement. Provisions relating to the Senecas, Article 5. The Senecas now confederated with the Shawnees. The said Shawnees thereto consenting agree to dissolve their connection with the said Shawnees and to unite with the Senecas party to the Treaty of February 28, 1831 upon the reservation described in Article 2 of said treaty, and the several bands of Senecas will unite their funds into one common fund for the benefit of the whole tribe. And an equitable division shall be made of all funds or annuities now held in common by the Senecas and Shawnees. Article 6. Of the sum of $24,000 to be paid to said Senecas as provided in the second article, the sum of $4,000 shall be paid to them immediately after the ratification of this treaty to enable them to reestablish their homes and provide themselves with agricultural implements, seeds, and provisions for themselves and their families. And the balance of the said first mentioned sum, being $20,000, shall be consolidated with $20,000 in the first article provided to be paid and invested for the tribes of Senecas as constituted by this treaty at 5%. Interest to be paid per capita semi-annually, and their annuity of $500 in specie provided by Article 4 of the Treaty of September 29, 1817 shall likewise become the property of the tribe. Article 7. The amount annually due the Senecas under the provisions of Article 4 of the Treaty of February 28, 1831 for blacksmith after their separation from the Shawnees shall be annually paid to them as a national fund to enable them to purchase such articles for their wants and improvements in agriculture as the chiefs with the consent of their agent may designate, and this provision shall also apply to the fund for support of a miller belonging to the Senecas heretofore occupying the southernmost reserve referred to in this treaty, and there shall be added to the said fund whatever amount belonging to either band of the Senecas shall be found due and unpaid upon an examination of their accounts with the government, and particularly the amount of bond and stocks invested in their name, and the interest thereon shall be annually paid to the said Senecas for the purpose mentioned in this article. Provisions relating to the Shawnees. Article 8. Of the amount in the third article provided to be paid to the Shawnees by the U.S. for the lands therein ceded, the sum of $2,000 shall be advanced to them to be used in establishing their homes, and the balance of the said amount shall be invested for the said tribe under the name of Eastern Shawnees, and 5% be paid semi-annually thereon, and the amount due and unpaid upon the bonds or stocks invested in their name shall be paid to them, as well as the interest thereon hereafter to become due, to be used under the direction of the chiefs with the consent of the agent for the purchase of agricultural implements or the articles necessary for the general welfare of the people, and 1/2 of the blacksmith fund remaining after the division to be made with the Senecas provided in Article 5 shall remain devoted to the same purpose, and the government will add thereto the sum of $500 annually for 5 years. Provisions relating to the Quapaws. Article 9. Of the amount to be paid to the Quapaws for the land ceded by them in the fourth article of this treaty, the sum of $5,000 shall be paid to them upon the ratification of this treaty, to assist them in reestablishing themselves at their homes upon their remaining reservation, and the balance of said amount shall be invested as a permanent fund at 5% interest payable per capita semi-annually. Article 10. If the Osage Mission School should be closed so that the school fund of the Quapaws cannot be used for them to advantage at the institution, the said fund shall remain in the Treasury of the United States until such time as it can, under the direction of the Secretary of Interior, with the consent of the chiefs, be used to advantage in establishing a school upon their reservation. Article 11. The amount now due and unpaid for a farmer under the provisions of the third article of the Treaty of May 13, 1838, may be used by the chiefs and council for the purchase of provisions, farming implements, seed, and otherwise for the purpose of assisting the people in agriculture, and their annual income now paid for farmers shall hereafter be set apart for the purpose of assistance and improvement in agriculture. Article 12. Whereas the aforesaid Senecas, Mixenecas, Shawnees, and Quapaws were driven from their home during the late war and their property destroyed, it is agreed that a commission of not to exceed 2 persons shall be appointed by the Secretary of Interior, who shall proceed to their country and make careful investigation of their claims for losses, and make full report of the same to the Department, and the Secretary of Interior shall report the same to Congress. Provisions in relation to the Wyandots. Article 13. The U.S. will set apart for the Wyandots for their future home the land ceded by the Senecas in the first article hereof, and described in said article to be owned by the said Wyandots in common, and the Secretary of Interior is hereby authorized and required to appoint 3 persons whose duty it shall be to ascertain and report to the Department the amount of money, if any, due by the U.S. to the Wyandot Indians under existing treaty stipulations, and the items mentioned in Schedule A appended to this treaty, and the report of the person so appointed with the evidence taken shall be submitted to Congress for action at its next session. A register of the whole people resident in Kansas and elsewhere shall be taken by the agent of the Delawares under the direction of the Secretary of Interior on or before the 1st of July, 1867, which shall show the names of all who declare their desire to be and remain Indians and in a tribal condition, together with incompetents and orphans as described in the Treaty 1855, and all such persons and those only shall hereafter constitute the tribe, provided that no one has heretofore consented to become a citizen, nor the wife or children of any such person shall be allowed to become members of the tribe except by the free consent of the tribe after its new organization, and unless agent shall certify that such a party is through poverty or incapacity unfit to continue in the exercise of the responsibilities of citizenship of the U.S. and likely to become a public charge. Article 15. All restrictions upon the sale of lands assigned and patented to incompetent Wyandots under the 4th Article of the Treaty of 1855 shall be removed after the ratification of this treaty, but no sale of land heretofore assigned to orphans or incompetent shall be made, under decree of any court or otherwise, for or on account of any claim, judgment, execution, or order, or for taxes, until voluntarily sold by the patentee or his or hers heirs with the approval of the Secretary of Interior, and whereas many sales of land belonging to this class have heretofore been made contrary to the spirit and intent of the Treaty of 1855, it is agreed that a thorough examination and report shall be made under direction of the Secretary of Interior in order to ascertain the facts relating to all such cases, and upon a full examination of such report and hearings of the parties interested, the said Secretary may confirm the said sales or require an additional amount to be paid, or declare such sales entirely void as the very rate of the several cases may require. Provisions relating to the Odawas. Article 16. The west part of the Shawnee Reservation, ceded to the U.S. by the 3rd Article, is hereby sold to the Ottawas at $1 per acre, and for the purpose of paying for said reservation, the U.S. shall take the necessary amount whenever the area of such land shall be found by actual survey from the funds in the hands of the government arising from the sale of the Odawa trust lands, as provided in the 9th Article of the Treaty of 1862, and the balance of said fund after the payment of accounts provided for in Article 5 of the Treaty of 1862 shall be paid to the tribe per capita. Article 17. The provisions of the Odawa Treaty of 1862, under which all the tribe were to become citizens upon the 16th of July, 1867, are hereby extended for 2 years, or until July 16th, 1869. But any time previous to that date, any member of the tribe may appear before the U.S. District Court of Kansas and declare his intention to become a citizen, when he shall receive a certificate of citizenship, which shall include his family, and thereafter be disconnected with the tribe, and shall be entitled to his proportion of the tribal fund, and all who shall not have made such declaration previous to the last mentioned date shall still be considered members of the tribe. In order to enable the tribe to dispose of their property in Kansas and remove to their new homes and establish themselves thereon, patents and fee simple shall be given to the heads of families and to all who have come of age among the allottees under the treaties of 1862, so that they may sell their lands without restriction. But the said land shall remain exempt from taxation so long as they may be retained by members of the tribe down to the said 16th of July, 1869, and the chiefs and council of said tribe shall decide in the case of disputed heirship to real estate, taking as a rule the laws of inheritance of the state of Kansas. Article 18. The U.S. agreed to pay the claim of J.T. Jones, for which a bill of appropriation has passed one of the branches of Congress, but which has been withdrawn from before Congress, being for destruction by fire of his dwelling and other property by whites in 1856, shall be allowed and paid to him, amounting to $6,700. Article 19. The 6th Article of the Treaty of 1862 shall remain unchanged, except as provided in this article. The children of the tribe between the ages of 6 and 18 shall be entitled to be received at said institution and to be subsisted, clothed, educated, and attended in sickness, where the sickness is of such a nature that the patient promises a return to study within a reasonable period. The children to be taught and practiced in industrial pursuits suitable to their age and sex, and both sexes in such branches of learning, and to receive such advantages as the means of the institution will permit. These rights and privileges to continue so long as any children of the tribe shall present themselves for their exercise, and the Secretary of Interior and the senior corresponding secretary of the American Baptist Home Mission Society shall be members ex officio of the Board of Trustees, with power to vote in person or by proxy, it being the special intention of this provision to furnish additional supervision of the institution, so that the provisions of this article may be carried into effect in their full spirit and intent. Article 20. It is further agreed that the remaining unsold portion of trust lands of the Odawas, amounting to 7,221 and 2100 acres, shall be sold to the trustees of Odawa University to be disposed of for the benefit said institution at the appraised value thereof, and that the said trustee shall have until July 16, 1869, to dispose of the same and pay to the government the value of said lands, provided that the said trustee shall furnish within 30 days after the ratification of this treaty to the Secretary of Interior a satisfactory bond for the fulfillment of their obligations. Provisions relating to the Peorias, Kaskaskias, Weas, and Pinkachaws. Article 21. Whereas certain arrangements have been made by the chiefs of the confederated tribes of Peorias, Kaskaskias, Weas, and Pinkachaws for the sale to actual settlers of the lands held by them in common, being 9 1/2 sections, for a reasonable consideration according to the terms of a certain position of the said tribe, was scheduled annex, which schedule is an annex to this treaty and marked B, dated December 26, 1866, filed in the office of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. It is agreed that the said arrangement shall be carried into full effect, and the purchasers thereunder shall receive patents from the U.S. for the land so purchased upon making full payment for the same to the Secretary of Interior, and the amount already paid by said purchasers, as appears from said schedule and in the hands of the chief, shall be paid to the Secretary of Interior, and the whole amount of purchase money shall also be paid to the Secretary of Interior on or before the first day of June 1867, and shall be held by him for the benefit of the tribe, subject to the provisions of this treaty. Article 22. The land in the second and fourth articles of this treaty proposed to be purchased from the Senecas and Quapaws and lying south of Kansas is hereby granted and sold to the Peorias, etc., and shall be paid for at the rate paid for the same by the government, out of the proceeds of the 9 1/2 sections referred to in the last preceding article, adding thereto whatever may be necessary out of other monies in the hands of the U.S. belonging to said Peorias. Article 23. The said Indians agree to dispose of their allotments in Kansas and remove to their new homes in Indian country within 2 years from the ratification of this treaty, and to that end the Secretary of Interior is authorized to remove altogether the restrictions upon the sales of their lands provided under authority of the third article of the treaty of May 30th, 1854, in such manner that adult Indians may sell their own lands, and that the lands of minors and incompetents may be sold by the chiefs with the consent of the agent certified to the Secretary of Interior and approved by him, and if there should be any allotments for which no owner or heir thereof survives, the chiefs may convey the same by deed, the purchase money thereof to be applied under the direction of the Secretary to the benefit of the tribe, and the guardianship of orphan children shall remain in the hands of the chiefs of the tribe, and the said chief shall have the exclusive right to determine who are members of the tribe and entitled to be placed upon the payrolls. Article 24. An examination shall be made of the books of Indian office and an account current prepared stating the condition of their funds and the representations of the Indians for overcharges for sales of their lands in 1857 and 1858 shall be examined and reported to Congress, and in order further to assist them in preparing for removal and in paying their debts, the further amount of $25,000 shall be at the same time paid to them per capita from the sum of $169,686.25 invested for said Indians under Act of Congress of July 12, 1862, and the balance of said sum of $169,686.75, together with the sum of $98,000 now invested on behalf of said Indians in state stock of Southern states, and the sum of $3,700 being the balance of interest of 5% per annum on $39,950 held by the U.S. from July 1857 till vested in Kansas bonds in December 1861, after crediting $5,000 thereon heretofore received for by the chiefs of said Indians, shall be and remain as the permanent fund of the said tribe at 5%. Be paid semi-annually thereon per capita to the tribe, and the interest due upon the sum of $28,500 in Kansas bonds and upon $16,200 in U.S. stocks now held for their benefit shall be paid to the tribe semi-annually in 2 equal payments as a permanent school fund income, provided that there shall be taken from the said invested fund and paid to the said tribe per capita on the 1st of July, 1868, the sum of $30,000 to assist them in establishing themselves upon their new homes, and at any time thereafter when the chief shall represent to the satisfaction of the Secretary of Interior that an additional sum is necessary. Such may be taken from their invested fund, and provided also that the said invested fund shall be subject to such division and diminution as may be found necessary in order to pay those who may become citizens their share of the funds of the tribe. Article 25. Whereas taxes have been levied by the authority of the state of Kansas upon lands allotted to members of the tribe, the right and justice of which taxation is not acknowledged by Indians, and on which account they have suffered great vexation and expense, and which is now a matter in question in the Supreme Court of the U.S., it is agreed that in case that court shall decide such taxes unlawful, the government will take measures to secure the funding of said taxes to such Indians as have paid them. Article 26. The Peorias, Kaskaskias, Weas, and Pinkachaws agreed that the Miamis may be confederated with them upon their new reservation, and own an undivided right to said reservation in proportion to the sum paid upon the payment by the Miamis of an amount which, in proportion to the number of the Miamis who shall join them, will be equal to their share of the purchase money in this treaty provided to be paid for the land, and also upon the payment into the common fund of such amount as shall make them equal in annuities to the said Peorias. The said privilege shall remain open to the Miamis 2 years from the ratification of this treaty. Article 27. The U.S. agreed to pay the said Indians a sum of $1,500 per year for 6 years for the blacksmith and for necessary iron, steel, and tools, in consideration of which payment the said tribe hereby relinquish all claims for damages and losses during the late war, and at the end of the said 6 years any tools or materials remaining shall be the property of the tribe. Article 28. Inasmuch as there may be those among them who may desire to remain in Kansas and become citizens of the U.S., it is hereby provided that within 6 months after the ratification of this treaty a register shall be taken by the agent, which shall show the names separately of all who voluntarily desire to remove, and all who desire to remain and become citizens, and those who shall elect to remain may appear before the judge of the U.S. District Court for Kansas and make declaration of their intention to become citizens and take oath to support the Constitution of the U.S., and upon filing of a certificate of such declaration and oath in the office of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, he shall be entitled to receive the proportionate share of themselves and their children, and the invested funds and other common property of the tribe, and therefrom they and their children shall become citizens and have no further rights in the tribe, and all the females who are heads of families, single woman of full age, shall have the right to make such declaration and become disconnected from the tribe. Article 40. If any amendment shall be made to this treaty by the Senate, it shall only be necessary to submit the same for the assent of the particular tribe or tribes interested, and should any such amendments be made and the assent of the tribe or tribes interested not be obtained, the remainder of the treaty not affected by such amendment shall nevertheless take effect and be in force. In testimony whereof, the before-named commissioners on behalf of the U.S. and the before-named delegates on behalf of the Senecas, McSenecas, Shawnees, Quapaws, Confederated Peorias, Kaskaskias, Weas, Pinkishaws, Miamis, Odawas, and Wyandots have hereunto set our hands and seals day and year, first above written. Louis V. Bogie, Commissioner of Indian Affairs, W.H. Watson, Special Commissioner, Thomas Murphy, Superintendent of Indian Affairs, G.C. Snow, U.S. Indian Agent, Neosha Agency, G.A. Colton, U.S. Indian Agent for Miamis, Peorias, and Company, George Spicer, his X-mark, John Mush, his X-mark, Senecas, John Whitetree, his X-mark, John Young, his X-mark, Louis Davis, his X-mark, Senecas and Shawnees, S.G. Villiers, Kashika, his X-mark, Quapaws, Baptiste Peoria, his X-mark, John Mitchell, his X-mark, Edward Black, Peorias and Company, Thomas Meadow Senya, his X-mark, Thomas F. Richardville, Miamis, John Wilson, his X-mark, J.T. Jones, Odawas, Tormey, his X-mark, John Caraho, his X-mark, Wyandots. In the presence of Frank Val, his X-mark, U.S. Interpreter for Osage River Agency, John B. Robideau, his X-mark, U.S. Interpreter for Miamis, William Hart, Interpreter for Odawas, George Wright, Interpreter for Wyandots, Abelard Guthrie, George B. Jonas, Thomas E. McGraw, Louis S. Hayden, Charles Sims, R. McBratney. Witness to signatures of Louis Davis, G.L. Young, G.C. Snow, U.S. Indian Agent. A. Schedule showing the several items embraced in the sum agreed to be paid to the Wyandots by the 13th article of the foregoing treaty. 1. Annuity due under the 6th article of the treaty of January 31st, 1855, $8,750. Number 2. Amount discounted on $53,594.53 in state bonds on the 13th of May, 1859, $15,187.03. Number 3. Interest on the above $15,787.03 from May 13th, 1859 to February 1st at 5%, $6,150.87. Number 4. Amount discounted on $53,000 in state bonds March 24th, 1860, $11,130. Number 5. Interest on the above $11,130 from March 24th, 1860 to February 24th, 1867, $4,618.95. 6. Money is heretofore appropriated in fulfillment of treaty stipulations, but transferred to the surplus funds, $3,635.05. 7. Amount for depredations on Wyandotte property. Claim approved by Secretary of Interior, March 21st, 1862, $34,342.50. Totaling amount, $83,814.40. The above-named total sum is designed to represent the full claim of the Wyandottes against the U.S. under former treaties. The first, second, and fourth items, together with another named in the 14th article of the foregoing treaty, were examined and approved by the House Committee on Indian Affairs, and their payment recommended. See Congressional Globe, page 1037, Part 2nd, Second Session of 38th Congress. Third and fifth items constitute the interest on the monies discounted on the bonds mentioned in items 2 and 4, although the committee Society did not recommend the payment of this interest. They acknowledged its justice, but said that its allowance would possibly endanger the passage of the appropriation, as the general feeling was averse to paying interest on claims. The seventh item embraces several small amounts for schools, blacksmith, etc., which were due and appropriated at the date of the treaty but not paid, and were afterwards transferred to the surplus fund. The eighth item is for depredations on Wyandotte property during the Kansas troubles and the entire immigration to California. It was examined and approved by the Secretary of Interior, March 21, 1862. B. Names of settlers, numbers of land, and price thereof, together with the amount deposited by each settler on the 10-section reserve in Miami County, Kansas. Names: Andrew J. Sinclair, Zacchaeus Hayes, Randolph Boyd, John Nichols and William Gray, and John Martin, David H. Banta. Reuben Fellows: J.T. Pfeiffer, Leroy Martin, Charles Converse, Benjamin Wingrove, Samuel McKinney, Squire James Waller, George A. Whitaker, William Smith, Edward Morgan. Albert Bendorf, Charles Martin, Francis Hastings, and William Morgan, Jr. Joel O. Leverage, George W. Leverage, Alfred Leverage, jointly. Isaac Shaw, Jacob Sims, Zacchaeus Hayes, Town Tract, Ambrose Shields, Anthony Cott, Edward Dadgenet. This tract to be conveyed to David Perry and Charles Sims on payment of said $1,280 by June 1st. The three last named and half-breed Indians who will become citizens. Said Shields has 5 children, said Cott 3, Dagonet 2, William Smith, the settler aforesaid, has a half-breed wife and 2 children. He takes 100 acres in full of the interest of his family and net proceeds of the reserve and is to pay $160 besides. Said Shields, Cott, and Dagonet take their respective tracts at the price stated in lieu of a like sum of the shares of themselves and families in the net proceeds of the reserve, provided that should the share of either family in the net proceeds of the reserves be less than the price agreed for the land taken by the head of such family, then the deficit to be paid in money as by other settlers. The title in each of the 4 cases last mentioned to be jointly to the various members of the family by name whose shares in said proceeds pay for same. Joshua Clayton takes southeast quarter section 36, total payment $640. Noel Shaw, Thomas Morgan, there is 80 acres untaken for with which a purchaser will be named by the chiefs before 1st of June next. Total land disposed of 6,000 acres. Total money deposited $5,970. Total amount of prices agreed $23,438. The above lands to be patented to the persons aforesaid of their representatives on prompt payment of the price agreed by 1st June 1867, provided that if any settler refuse or neglect to pay as aforesaid, then the tract of land by him claimed to be sold under sealed bids.